Hey guys, it's Lauren, and I'm here to do my May review. I know it's July, but I'm going ahead and going to go over my May review of the books that I've read in May, and then I'll talk about my June books in the next video. So make sure that you follow me on Goodreads at Hello Constant Reader, and also make sure that you leave a comment below telling me what kind of books you've read, what you enjoyed, and have you read any of the books that I have. Let me know what you think in the comments. The first book that I read is called Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, and this is a horror thriller book. And it's one of my favorites of 2020 so far, honestly. There's constant action. So a lot of people say that in the first 100 pages, it's kind of boring to some of them. But honestly, they're just trying to set up the characters, set up the setting and the plot and what's going on in the backstory of the characters. And honestly, I didn't find it boring. I found it really interesting to know a little bit more about the characters before we dive into the scary parts. Also, by the end of the book, I was really exhausted. So much happens in this book, and there is just constant action. So if you're one of those people who loves there to constantly be something going on and you're just on the edge of your seat, this is definitely one for you. The story is about a boy named Christopher and his mom who moved to a new town, and he wants to build this tree house because his imaginary friend told him to after he got lost for about a week in the woods. And so him and his mom have this great relationship, and his mom is kick butt awesome. But his writing style is amazing. He definitely uses a lot of figurative language, and he has a lot of details. He does a really good job of making it terrifyingly believable and making it really, really creepy and really scary. I think my favorite part is that every end of every chapter is like a cliffhanger, and so that you're reading also a good book if you are literally responding out loud to the book. And I laughed, I cried, I gasped. I also love the theme, which is good versus evil, which is a really strong theme in this book that I really enjoyed. So definitely, this is one of my favorite books so far of 2020, so definitely give it a try. The next book that I read is called The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and that was written by Becky Chambers, and this is a science fiction book. I'm gonna be honest, I did not like this book, and it landed on my did not finish list. I got about 2/3 of the way in, and I just couldn't push myself any longer, and I thought, what's the point of pushing myself so hard if I really don't like what I'm reading? And so I went ahead and I decided to stop. There was really, honestly, in my opinion, there was no plot, not a plot that was interesting enough to continue the story along. A lot of it focused on building up characters and learning about different species, and a lot of dialogue between the characters. So they were building up a lot of relationships, but it was just something that I'm just not interested in. I'm a person who likes action, things to really happen, and I thought, this is a long way to a small angry planet. It's going to be a crazy journey with adventures and, scary on the edge of your seat things. And it's sort of just none of that at all. Absolutely not at all. If it was in the last third of the book, I guess I'll never know. So maybe you'll have to read that part and let me know. But so many people told me great things. So personally, I didn't like it. But if science fiction is something you love and you love a lot of character development with not as much action, maybe this is a book for you. I don't know. So it claims that there's a lot of adventures and life-risking events, but honestly, there just wasn't any of that for me. So not for me. I gave it a 1 star on Goodreads. I also read a book called If It Bleeds, and that is a collection of short stories that Stephen King has recently published in the category of horror, and definitely gave me creepy vibes that I loved so much. This is definitely more of his trendier writing. Definitely didn't give me the nostalgic vibe per se. Some of the stories kind of did, maybe the last story did, but he tried to kind of write a little bit more trendier, and I don't necessarily always like it when he does that. I typically kind of gravitate towards some of his older works, but I do like some of his newer works as well. So the first story is called Mr. Harrigan's Phone, and I gave that book 3 stars. It's about an old man and a boy who become friends, but then the old man sadly passes away and is buried with the phone that the boy gave him. When the boy runs into some bullying issues, he wishes that he could confide in his old friend, Mr. Harrigan. So he decides to call his phone just to kind of, get things off his chest. and it, goes to his voicemail, and he leaves a voicemail. And in the morning, those people who he talked about on the voicemail just mysteriously die overnight. And so the boy kind of starts to realize something strange is going on here. So it's definitely a good read. The second story I didn't really care for. I gave it 2 stars. It's called The Life of Chuck. It's in a post-apocalyptic story of how the end of the world connects with the death of a man named Chuck. It was kind of confusing. I didn't really understand what was going on. So if anybody wants to enlighten me on why this story was amazing or something that I missed out, definitely let me know in the comments below. The third story is the main story. It's If It Bleeds, and I loved it. It's 4 stars. This story was definitely my favorite. It has characters from Mr. Mercedes, the Bill Hodges trilogy, and also the recent book, The Outsider. So it's about Holly Givney, one of the characters from the Mr. Mercedes, the Bill Hodges trilogy. She does some dangerous work trying to track down this creepy monster that is the Outsider, pretty much, in the Outsider book, but this is a different one of the same kind of creatures. I loved the characters. I love Holly Givney so much, so it was fun to see her kind of have her own book. And I just really loved the ending as well. It was just an enjoyable read altogether. And then the last story definitely gave me nostalgic vibes. It's called Rat, and I gave it 3 stars. It was pretty good. It's about a writer having writer's block, and he goes into a creepy cabin in the woods to try to finish his story. Yeah, it definitely sounds scary already, doesn't it? Yeah. He gets this terrible sickness, and there's also this horrible snowstorm that traps him inside the cabin. And so he starts to kind of like hallucinate, he thinks. And he starts to talk to this rat. And he says, well, what would you do if you could finish the book? Would you give me the name of a person who you would choose to die in return for you actually getting to finish your book? And the guy kind of thinks it's a joke or he's just hallucinating. But sadly, he wasn't. So most of the story is really intriguing. It leaves you really wanting to know more. The ending was a little bit anticlimactic, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. But overall, the book was really good. I loved the short stories. It was really a short collection, and definitely an enjoyable, quick read. The next book that I read was another amazing book, one of my favorites of 2020 so far. It's Where the Crawdads Say by Delia Owens. And this one is classified as mystery with romance. Ooh, 5 stars. Amazing. I read this one in 1 day. That's right, 1 day, you guys, because it was just that good. I couldn't put it down. It was just really different and unique. The setting is in the marshlands of North Carolina in the late 1960s. It's about this poor family who moves there, but eventually all her family just abandons this young girl named Kaya. So she practically has to raise herself. The town calls her Marsh Girl and pretty much just ostracizes her, and they're very prejudiced against her because she just lives in the marsh. But she finds love, she loses love, and then there's a body that's found in the marsh, and immediately everybody blames her just because they just don't like her because they think she's strange. So I read this on Audible. The performer did really good. I loved the voices, and I highly recommend the Audible version. And the ending blew my mind. Like the last like page or 2, I just couldn't believe it. I gasped out loud. I was like, what? So it's definitely one of those stories. It's a great mystery with some good romance too. And I loved this story. Definitely pick it up. The next book I read in May was Daisy Jones and the Six, and this is by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it's a historical fiction. Overall, I gave it about 3 stars. It wasn't really amazing to me, but it wasn't bad either. I think personally, I just don't vibe with this style of writing. It's about kind of like a biography in a way of celebrities. It has an overall interview style of writing, so the vibe is really grungy and gritty, and the book has a lot of good points. I mean, the writing is really enjoyable and really interesting. And again, I read it on Audible, and they had a different person read every different character in the story. There's a bunch of characters, and so everyone has a different voice. It's kind of hard to follow at first because they don't tell you when they're switching on the Audible version, so you have to really listen really carefully. This one has a lot of high reviews, and it wasn't a bad book, it just wasn't my style. Overall, it was interesting having the interview style writing and just kind of learning more about those characters. And I do liked the vibe, the grungy and the gritty, and learning, hearing from different perspectives the same story. So, I mean, there was a lot of good points about it. It just wasn't my favorite read. And then this is really funny, but I reread Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, and young adult fantasy romance. We all know this. I don't really need to say much, but I actually heard that Midnight Sun is finally coming out. So Stephanie Meyer forever has talked about writing this story from Edward's perspective, and I'm interested in reading it. It drops August 4th, 2020, so we're only about a month away from it dropping. And so I decided to go ahead and just reread. I was going to reread the whole series, but after reading the first book, I was like, I don't need to really reread the whole series. I did enjoy reading this one again. I recently reread all the Harry Potter books and loved every second of that. Just kind of wanted to feel, I guess, some middle school nostalgia again. I added a lot of sticky notes reactions, so I think that made it really fun, was just kind of like thinking, okay, this is my reaction, like this is really weird. And I kind of highlighted different parts so I could kind of just go back and laugh about it and talk to my friends from middle school about it. The big thing here is go on Goodreads, and I want you to go to the 1-star reviews and please read them. People have written pages and pages of the most hilarious content, and so me and my husband and my friends have just laughed at that. It's really funny. I'm not saying the book is bad. I gave it, I think, maybe 2 or 3 stars. It's definitely a breakout book. I mean, it definitely has defined a lot of young adult books. Not necessarily for good, but I mean, it is an interesting story. I mean, it's definitely not a literary work or anything, but it definitely is intriguing. And then the last book that I read is What We Forgot to Bury by Marin Montgomery, and it is a thriller mystery. I love this genre. Personally, it just had a little bit too much girl drama in it and high school drama. I'm more into the mystery thriller, like excitement, action, scary part rather than like drama. And so this book kind of was more of a thriller drama in my opinion. Definitely was a lot of mystery. Definitely didn't see a lot of things coming. But let me just warn you right now, every single character in that book is going to lie to you. So be prepared, because there is a lot of lies and a lot of girl drama. Also, another warning, there's abuse, cheating, murder, and just a lot of lying. There's a lot of dialogue in the book. It's mostly just dialogue. Each chapter goes back and forth between 2 main characters' perspective, the girl and then the older woman in the story. The writing wasn't amazing. It wasn't a literary work or anything, but the author did a really good job of weaving these web of lies together and building up into the end of the story. So I did enjoy reading it because of that. It was a fast read. It wasn't like my favorite book or anything, but it was fun for just a quick, enjoyable mystery with a little bit of drama. So those were the books that I read in the month of May. I really enjoyed sharing them with you. Please let me know if you've read any of these books and what was your opinion. What books are you currently reading this summer? What are you really excited to read coming up soon? Just let me know. Also, don't forget to follow me on Goodreads and Instagram. On Goodreads, I'm Hello Constant Reader, and on Instagram, I'm Hello Kitty Constant Reader. So yeah, those are all the books I read in the month of May, and let me know in the comments below what you think too. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.